Hello, everyone, and welcome to ISACA Live. I am Holly Mangrum Willis, Senior Program Manager for ISACA's One in Tech Foundation. I am here and honored to be here today with two special guests for a great conversation in recognition of International Women's Day today. This year's theme is Break the Bias. Now, before we go any further, it is important to note that this conversation is not just for women. It is critical that our male colleagues listen in too and create space for everyone across the gender spectrum. So let's get started. Let's jump right on in. With me today are ISACA COO Simone Rollinson and Janae Marinkovich, virtual CISO and CTO of Tiro Security. Hi, Simona. Hi, Janae.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. So, before we go any further, I would love to give you all the opportunity to tell us a little bit about your stories, and as women are still significantly underrepresented in senior tech and cybersecurity roles, the both of you represent the best and the brightest, right? So please share with us, how did you get to where you are today? I'll toss it to Janai first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you and welcome everybody. My name is Janae Morinkovich, and I am the virtual CISO and CTO for a security consulting company called Tyro Security. And I'm also the executive director for a newly launched nonprofit called Gracie, which is GRCIE, or GRC for Intelligent Ecosystems. And we focus on taking people and training them into cybersecurity careers. My background, I am 20 years in the industry, and I've held just about every position, across the cybersecurity spectrum. But I've had the opportunity to work for large companies such as DirecTV. I helped build out their security program. I was the chief technology officer and chief information security officer for a company called Beyond, which is a digital design agency. I've worked for Electronic Arts, but when I really look at like how my career started, a long time ago, I decided I wanted to get into cybersecurity. I'd seen a magazine called 2600, and when I
Mm.
saw the magazine and I read it, I was like, "This is what I wanted to do." And I was really fortunate throughout my career to have had many mentors and many people who were willing to help teach me and help learn as I, moved up through the ranks throughout cybersecurity. So I've had the opportunity to do everything from, security engineer, security architect. I've built and run digital forensics groups. I've run architecture groups, and just each phase of my career, is really key to have, really strong women present in my life.
Fantastic. And thank you for sharing that with us. Simona, please share.
So, hello. Let me start by saying how pleased I am to be with you today and have an opportunity to say a few remarks about the subject of women and especially women in technology. ISACA and our board and leadership have made those topics and issues of inclusivity, diversity, technology cornerstones of our strategy. So, I make every effort to extend these priorities throughout my interactions with my team, but also with the outside world outside of ISACA. But before I introduce myself, which will be brief, I just want to start by commending the incredibly brave women of Ukraine. They are fighting, they are sheltering their loved ones in bunkers, they are giving birth in metro stations. It's a testament to their courage, to their strength, to their resilience in the worst of circumstances. So that's a segue to my background. I grew up in the Republic of Bulgaria, which is in Eastern Europe. Grew up in Sofia, and then came on a scholarship to study computer science in the United States. 20 years later, I was, a president of a software company in education. I saw the disruption to from print to digital. I saw students learning 24/7 on learning management system and with Google Docs. Then I was a CIO for Cook County, which is the second largest county in the United States around Chicago. Then I spent some time in construction. I was on the bleeding edge of construction technology, drone, and job site connectivity. But I was missing the mission driven nature of what I wanted to do. And so I came back to the nonprofit world of ISACA. I was an ISACA member long ago, long before I came to join ISACA. I'm a holder of 3 certifications, and here I'm today.
Thank you very much, Simona, and thank you for that acknowledgement of the struggles in Ukraine. Sincerely appreciate you, and our thoughts and prayers are with everyone fighting that fight at the moment. So International Women's Day. It has been celebrated for more than 100 years now. Simona, can you talk a little bit about why you think it is so important for us to continue to acknowledge and celebrate this day?
Well, women have fewer opportunities than men. They're just plain. Women are denied fair access to healthcare and education. Women make, 24 cents less on the dollar than their male counterparts. Nearly every day, 37,000 girls are forced under the age of 18, as old as my older, oldest daughter, are forced into marriage. In 2020, 32 million girls were unable to attend primary school. So I'm just going to stop here because need I say more?
Exactly, exactly. Janai, would you like to add anything?
Sure, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, we stand on the shoulders of the giants of women, of our past. And, we reflect the people around us, we reflect our history. And if we forget, then, then we make those mistakes again. And so it's important for us to look back and realize that there were women who, fought and died, for us to be able to get to where we are today. The other thing is to understand their struggles and then compare them to our own. We learn through their journeys. And so by remembering the women that came before us, remembering the journeys that they took, kind of forces us to kind of put ourselves in the right mind state to say, we can do this. So anytime you're in a position where you think you can't do it, where you're overwhelmed, where you're scared, you can look back at the stories of the women before us and realize that you can do it, that this is possible, and that it is your job then to reach back and grab more women and take them along on your journey.
Absolutely, Janai. And to that point, let me ask. So this year's theme is breaking the bias, right? And so, we went to from a historical context of those who came before us. But what barriers and biases have you encountered, historical and current, that have been, more challenging to navigate and dismantle?
So the biases that I've had to deal with over my career, is I constantly feel like I have to prove myself, that I have to work 10 times harder, and that people aren't going to quite take me as seriously because I am a woman. And in the security industry, where it is an industry that's male dominated, at the end of the day, let's be realistic. Cybersecurity is about power. And power dynamics within an organization. And so for, people to cede power to you, to give you that seat at the table, I've had to overcome certain biases in order to be able to get that seat at the table. One of the issues that I've often found is that people will listen to you to a point and then talk over the top of you. That it destroys me. It destroys me because you're taking away my voice.
Yes.
You're discounting what it is that I have to say. And it's one of those subtle type of biases that you have to watch out for. But there are ways around all of this. And part of it is to build strong networks. And build strong networks with women. Again, it goes back to the journey. Understand the journeys of the women before you so that you can understand, how it is that you can overcome a lot of the historic biases that we see in the industry today.
Yeah, Simona, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would take a little bit of a different angle. I don't want to repeat the beautiful thesis and what Janine was talking about. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that a lot of our programs and policies in the workplace have started their philosophical history in the 50s, and the world
Mm,
hasn't changed. The strategies don't encourage inclusivity. So just like old programming languages like COBOL or Fortran, these old systems and old programs and policies, they lack agility. So a lot of our bias is systemic, and it's in the workplace. And the workplace of today is very different than the workplace of the 50s, yet those policies and programs haven't changed drastically. So that's one point I wanted to make. And the second point I wanted to make is the point of a concept that I call the leaky pipelines. So
mm,
basically, if you think of young girls starting since the 70s, a lot more women have joined the technology world, except the number of graduating computer science peaked in 1983. I was still in middle school. So there are 37% of women graduating. And since then, we've lost momentum. So that's what I talk about leaky pipelines. There are women getting master's degrees, yet, fewer women are getting PhDs than men. And women that are getting doctorates, fewer women are getting full, tenure professorship at university. So we're losing women every step of the way, and we need to educate everybody that it's happening, and that we need to really increase female participation everywhere and employment rates, and that's one of the lowest hanging fruits, in my opinion, for economic growth, and one of the most fruitful.
absolutely. Simona, you bring up an excellent point about workplace policies being antiquated and from the 50s, right? Which, in my mind, I tie to when women began entering the workforce en masse because of the wars that were being fought and no men available to work around the world, right? And so, to that end, not only has gender become an issue for women, but then we start to explore the intersectional approaches with regard to ethnicity, culture, and race. And so, while like Simona mentioned earlier, gender bias impacts pay, but we don't get the full picture unless we look at race as well. Where women are paid 80 cents for every dollar every a man makes before an African American woman in the US, that gap widens to 64 cents on the dollar, or for Hispanic women, 56 cents on the dollar. So in your opinion, what can organizations do to be better at taking an intersectional approach to breaking the bias? Janae, go ahead.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. So at first is you have to be aware of it. So
Mm,
I'm Black, and I didn't realize that I had pay gaps in my compensation. This is really interesting. This is at an executive level.
mhm,
And it wasn't until a dear friend of mine, she's also one of the founders of our nonprofit, when we had first met, and she took a look at my compensation and realized that my compensation, wasn't the same as others. We had a real strong conversation about it. So I think part of it is you have to get the numbers, you got to get the data.
mhm.
So looking at people's compensations and making sure that there is inequality across, or an equity rather, across everybody's comp is one of the things that you end up having to do. The next thing is let's be honest. When we look at the cybersecurity industry, 7% of positions are held by people of color, and when we look at and that's director and above. And when we look at board members, only 5% of board members are people of color, or women and people of color. And so culture change starts at the top. And anybody who tries to say that culture starts at the bottom up is inaccurate. One of the big ways that you have to solve this problem is you have to get more women and more women of color into positions of leadership, into the director and the VP and above, and then on the board of directors as well. And when you start to make those changes, then they percolate down. You start to see better representation. But the big thing is you got to get the numbers. and you have to look at them. And I'll end on this. One of the unique issues that happens is that we oftentimes don't know that we're underpaid. We think we're doing just fine. And so when somebody comes into your organization, if you're HR, you're recruiting, and somebody comes into your organization and you know they're underpaid, don't try and add just 10% to their compensation. Pay them what the role should pay.
Yes.
And if that means doubling the compensation, then that's fine, right? So if we start historically at a lower compensation, then, that percolates as we go up the chain of command, even into executive level position.
Oh my word. I couldn't have said it better. Simona, we have a question in the chat. Sophia asks, how can I discuss pay gap with leadership?
Well, I think we all need to be braver. We need to speak up and we need to empower others to speak up. We need to dispel the myth that things are fair and equitable. It's just a myth. And the more organizations prioritize hiring a diverse workforce, which adds tremendous value to the global economy, right? Multiple backgrounds, perspectives, always good for innovation, always good for understanding the customer. And young people will start seeing themselves, represented and seeing the role models around them. So, um, again, I encourage everybody, not just women, but other marginalized groups, and not just people of color, women, other marginalized group, to let go of the myth of meritocracy once and for all, and do not perpetuate this myth, and speak openly and honestly with colleagues as well as with leadership, and do not let tradition limit your imagination.
Absolutely. And if I may add just a piece, it has been taboo to speak about salary and to speak about levels of compensation. Nowadays, I share freely because you don't know where everyone else is unless you ask or unless someone is sharing, right? So asking, like you said, being brave enough to ask those questions, to share alike. And I believe that's how you build strength in numbers as well, because more people feel empowered. It's not just a me versus them, but it's a us for the greater good, right? Um, so we've been talking about a lot about the challenges and the struggles, but a lot of time has indeed passed. So can you share, Simona, some specific ways in which you've seen growth in the industry's ability to embrace gender balance and inclusivity?
Yes, some organizations are doing obviously better job than others, and I really applaud them. The more they are trying to do that in a systemic way, the better off we are. So, for example, um, organizations that look at their hiring practices, it starts with hiring, right, from the very beginning. Very often, job descriptions can be traditionally very masculine, right? They use aggressive, overly technical terms. They demand requirements that potentially are not even necessary for the job. So, college degrees or advanced college degrees may not be necessarily required. Yet, the job descriptions are just so weak that it propagates the inability of women and marginalized groups to join the workforce. So, uh, those practices have to be looked at consistently by everybody in organizations. Entry level jobs need to be looked at. And if your staff is mostly white and male, then the references will be from folks that they congregate with, right? Or their referrals would be mostly white and male. So we need to be very proactive in recruiting diverse pools of candidates. And the second thing I want to say is I make a distinction. I often say that the most qualified candidate is not the best candidate. And that has been a controversial sentence because people say, oh, we should hire the most qualified person. That's not necessarily the best candidate. So we need to really be very deliberate in our approach to hiring and diversifying our place in our workplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Janai, I'm going to ask you another question. Within the context of the areas ISACA serves, including IT audit, governance, risk, and cybersecurity, why is the achievement of gender balance critical to the viability and trust of the industry?
Sure. I have a dear friend, and she is a landscape architect, and she gave me a quote, and it's "Monocultures die." And it applies to cybersecurity and GRC. Monocultures die, and we're a monoculture. And when you start to see a lot of the systemic problems that we have in the industry as a whole, right? So the increase in vulnerabilities, the increase in the severity of attacks and breaches, a lot of times because of the interconnectivity. When we look at a lot of these problems that we have, it is because we have built a monoculture. We have built a monoculture, not just in terms of identity and, in terms of race, but when we look at those of us who have been in the industry for a long time, we all came up through the same backgrounds as well. We came in through IT, we came in through development, we came in through these highly technical areas, in through the area of cybersecurity. And so we lack diversity across the board. And when you lack diversity, especially when you look at an adversary that is diverse by design, and you end up having severe problems because we lack the creativity, the out of the box thinking to be able to rise to that challenge. And the only way to fix that is through diversity. And so if we don't solve the diversity problem across the board, diversity of experience, diversity of identity, diversity of gender, then you end up building a monoculture, and things will only get worse.
Oh, that's incredible.
I, I
Simona,
love I love the phrase that diverse by design. I mean, we say secure by design, privacy by design, but diverse by design is exactly what I was trying to stress, that it needs to be a deliberate, conscientious approach to this. And just bottom line is, women represent half of the world's population. It is a human right first
yes,
and foremost. And then, obviously, besides being a fundamental human right, it's essential to achieve innovation and sustainable development. So, empowering women and underprivileged people is allowing them to be part of the next economy, right?
yes,
If they're not prepared, if they don't have access to education, if they don't have access to jobs, what are we doing? You know, we are cutting off a significant proportion of our population from the next economy, from the world
yeah,
of artificial intelligence, and we're perpetuating the inequality, and it's actually getting worse. In order to
absolutely.
stay remain competitive, whether it's Chicago, United States, wherever country you are, we need to make sure that everybody has access to the next economy.
Oh, I was going to say, you bring up an excellent point with AI. And I'll hook into that, in terms also about why this is so critical. So we are immersed in thinking systems. Everything
Mm,
around us, right, is imbued with artificial intelligence, and these systems learn by our presence. And when we are not present, we are teaching these systems we don't belong. And so from the requirements phase of building an algorithm all the way through deploying and operationalizing thinking systems, if we are not present at the design, at the development, at the build and operationalization of these algorithms, we're teaching these systems we don't belong. And the problem is that I can talk down or I can convince another human being to think differently. When you're
mm,
talking about thinking systems, these things get hard coded, and these systems teach other systems, teach other systems, teach other systems. And you have now built this systemic framework and code that
yep,
women and people of color don't belong.
absolutely. It's an artificial intelligence systemic oppression, right?
It is.
Yep, absolutely. That is so poignant. And unfortunately, we are out of time. I am so sorry we didn't have more time today, but thank you so very much to Simona Rollinson and Janae Marinkovich. I appreciate your insights so very much. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Please be sure to visit oneintech.org. And also, I have the pleasure of announcing the International Women's Day Scholarship in recognition of the perseverance of women to continually grow, and strengthen their professional abilities, our foundation, One in Tech, will award scholarships to ISACA members who self-identify as women for professional development. This One in Tech scholarship funds virtual career and interview coaching from Blair Selly, development coach, and for those who are historically underrepresented in technology fields. We will be awarding 12 scholarships to selected participants to receive invaluable resources for building their careers. The application will open on March 28th. So stay tuned to LinkedIn, to oneintech.org for more information on how to apply because it is coming soon. Thank you so very much. Happy International Women's Day to everyone. Please be sure to celebrate for the entire month and for the entire year because our work is not done yet. Thank you, everyone. Make a difference today. Take care and stay safe. Thank you, Simona. Thank you, Janae.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.